I am taking my countertop and I am rubbing it down with some all-purpose flour. The reason why I'm doing this is because I do not want a big mess, and pie crust is notorious for sticking to countertops. I mean, some people want to use marble and stuff like that, which is fine, but it's totally not necessary. Just make sure to use a lot of flour. So to roll out a pie crust, you want to start with your disc and you want to make sure it's well floured, and then you take your rolling pin and you push it basically forward, back, and then you turn it and you continue. And so at the beginning, because it's straight out of the fridge, it's going to be a little tough, but then as you continue to push, it becomes more and more malleable. And eventually, I'm going to want this to be, I'd say, like between like 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 inch thick. All right, well, this is starting to look basically ready to go. So I'm just making sure that there's no cracks, that I'm just pinching them all together. And then I'm going to take my pie crust, and here's a fun trick. This is how you get it perfectly on the pie pan every single time. You roll it up very gently. Make sure there's still plenty of flour in action. There you go. And then you just roll it right on top. Because here's the thing about pie dough. It doesn't stretch. It's not pizza dough. So you very gently want to just push it in. You don't want to create any additional cracking or breakage, because what happens is that when it bakes, it actually gets worse. And one way to just make sure you don't get any slices of pie out of a pie plate is if you have cracks in your dough, what that means is that all of the juices are going to seep out and you'll have something kind of caramelized to the pie plate. There you go. Very nice. So I'm going to take my paring knife. I'm going to give this about like an extra inch or so off the edge. And I told you, I make kind of like way too much pie dough, but I'd rather have way too much left over to do hand pies with than not enough. So the pie crust is in, but it's not finished yet. So what I'm going to do is actually roll this guy up. If you find yourself getting like too much in a pocket, just cut it off. So the crust actually could be done at this point. I just simply rolled the crust here, and it looks super rustic. And I mean, honestly, it's pie, so everyone's gonna love it no matter what. But if I wanna give it a little bit of a flourish, I personally like doing a pinch crust because it's very easy, but I also love the fact that it just immediately looks like pie. Like it just signals pie to everybody. So, I mean, I literally just walk or take my fingers around and I just pinch it into a little design. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm taking my fork and I am putting little holes all over it. And this is because I am using this crust to blind bake. And blind baking is when you basically just par bake a crust, because this is gonna be the crust for my chocolate silk pie. So I need to bake the pie crust before I put the filling in it. So if you're doing any sort of make ahead pies, like basically any pie where the filling gets added after the crust is baked, this is what you're going to do. So I have my oven preheated to 375. I have my pie crust perfectly rolled out. By stabbing it with a fork, what this means is I'm not gonna get any air bubbles, so it's gonna maintain its shape. And then the last little thing I do is I take some parchment paper and then I use beans, but you could also use pie weights. You lay them into the middle of the pie and you just kind of spread them around. And what the beans do is this just kind of holds everything down and it makes sure that it holds its shape really well in the oven. All right, well, I'm gonna bake this off. I'm gonna bake it with the parchment in for about 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna remove the beans and the parchment and bake it for another 10 minutes, just until it gets really nice and golden brown.